David, thank you again for being with me today. You look very similar to the last time I saw you.
Yeah, another week older, another day closer to putting this body back in the dirt.
Well, good. Freedom.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
not freedom, just trying to do as much good on this planet as I can before I have to go. Leave it a little better place.
well, good. Well, that's why we're here today with our
Yep,
intention to make the world a little bit a better
yep, yep,
place, intending some love.
yep, exactly.
Well, I have a question for you today, and it revolves around what are we gonna do? And you told me something that your teacher told me that was very helpful, and it was heart, head, hands, the triple H.
Right.
Explain how that works and how it's just a wonderful way to do life. It's kind of the easy way to do life.
So it's kind of the owner's manual for being in a human body. It's we're not human, not the way everybody thinks we're human, but we're pieces of God having a human experience. So once you understand that that's the real reality, that you're a piece of God having a human experience, then the next question is, well, how do you operate that vehicle in the most efficient manner? Where we get in trouble as pieces of God having a human experience is we're getting information from basically two basic levels. You're getting information from the human body that you're dwelling in, which is very, very loud and demanding. Your hunger, your fear, your attachments, all that's just information really, really loud, vying for your attention. And then you have the information from your spirit self, your part of you that's a part of God, and that's a little quieter. It's a quieter source of information. So that's a classic way of describing is that little voice, that little prompting from your heart and your conscience, right? So you could say the voice of God within you. It's quieter. It doesn't yell and scream. It's like classically. And I've asked this question all over the world, right? Did you ever hear that little voice? Well, you ever want to do something and the little voice says, "I don't do it." Everybody goes, "Yeah." I go, "You ever do it anyway?" Everybody goes, "Yeah." I go, "How's it turn out?" Everybody says the same thing. Doesn't turn out good, right? And then what do we say to ourselves? I should have listened. Should have listened to what? What is that? That's almost never wrong, right? So that is your true self, or the self that lives beyond the physical body. It's the piece of you that's a piece of God. So that's the confusion, is we're getting information from two basically different sources. One is you could say of the body, of the ego, and the other one is of your true self. And when you listen to that little voice, it usually turns out good, telling you not to do something you plan on doing, or doing something that maybe you'd be a little hesitant to do. Like you're on your way to work and you see some poor little homeless lady pushing her cart. She can't get it up on the curb out of the road, and the promptings in your heart and your conscience say, "Stop and help her," right? And you immediately, your physical self, well, I'm getting late for work, I can't stop, I should be all right, there'll be somebody to help her. And you continue to drive on, but yet there's a part of you, it bothers you the whole time, right? Conversely, if you pull over safely, right, and you go help her, the joy that you feel could last all day, right? So that's basically it. So heart, head, hands is the basic instructions on using the vehicle you find yourself in as a piece of God. So heart, head, hands basically is shorthand for stop and listen to the promptings of your heart, where your high self or divinity can connect your consciousness, or is your consciousness. Then once you get the what to do from the heart, then you go up to the head, the brain, the intellect, with all the information on the best way to do it. And then hands means you physically execute it in the real world. When I used to teach teenage boys, I'd give them the example. I say, okay, just say you and your buddy are out in a rowboat in the middle of a lake and neither one of you can swim, and he falls in. If you do head hands, your head goes, well, I can't swim. There's no point in both of us drowning, and he drowns, right? If you do heart hands, your heart says, help him, and you jump in and you both drown, right? So if you do hard head hands, your heart says, help him. So now the heart goes to its earthly counselor, the head, and you say, well, what's the best way to do this? And the head goes, well, you can't swim. Don't jump in. Reach out with an oar or throw him a flotation device or a rope or whatever, and you both go home safely. So that's the way to operate the human vehicle you find yourself in as a piece of God. You turn to the heart for what's right. Then once you determine the course you need to take, then you go to the head, which under the direction of the heart operates properly and will give you information on how to do it in a workable way. And then you physically execute it, right? So that's just the general owner's manual on how to operate as a piece of God in a human body, right? Now, that gets more and more efficient as you purify your heart, right? And purifying your heart to me is as you contemplate the oneness of all things, that all of it is God and that's a part of you. As you contemplate that intellectually and begin to feel more and more the truth of it, and you feel more and more connected to all other things, then the heart gets more pure. And as your heart purifies, you can hear more clearly the promptings of your high self, your eternal self, or God.
Yeah, let me interrupt right there, because I think that's an important distinction, because the intention that we have is the primary concern. And as your heart purifies, it's giving you different promptings as your same intention, right? Love God, love people, but the promptings may change as you purify your heart. How does that work? Is intention the most important thing?
I think it's a matter of sweeping away illusions, right? So if you don't believe in that everything is a piece of God and we're all part of that oneness, then I think it's hard to hear the more pure promptings of your heart to stop and help, because it may be more easily diluted with incorrect concepts being brought forth by your mind. Like, that person probably just deserved that. Why should I help? Why should I get involved?
That's right.
And I think part of purifying your heart, and like I said, for me, what worked best is contemplating the concept of the oneness of all things. So as you start to contemplate the concept of the oneness of all things, I think you can hear the promptings from your high self more clearly, because it's not so easily swept away by misunderstandings from your mind. And this is what I find many times. I can tell when it's the voice of God within me, because immediately my mind wants to block it. Immediately. Yeah. So you get those pure promptings from your high self. Many times it comes at a cost of your time, a cost of your money, a cost of your position, cost of your standing with others, because many times it's going to ask you to do something that may not be popular. It may not be easy. It may not be simple. It may not be inexpensive, right? I mean, let's just say you keep $100 as a emergency fund in your wallet, and you're getting ready to go to work, or you're at work, and some guy in the parking lot just comes up to you and goes, listen, you got a few cents you can loan me? I'm really struggling right now. I need to whatever. and your heart prompts you to give them 100. Your mind's going to come up with all kinds of stuff but the thing is, when it's God, you can ask 2, 3, 4 times, and the answer will come out the same. It's not from your mind. It's that feeling deep in your heart, like, help them. And your mind's immediately going, I didn't hear that right. I think I got 50 cents in the glove box, and he's probably just a drug addict or whatever. You can always tell when it's God, because it's asking you to be your best self, and immediately your mind is going to struggle with you over it, right? And as you purify your heart, you begin to now be able to differentiate the information that's coming to your consciousness by the frequency of it, right? It's always a very high frequency. God is always going to bring peace. God is always going to ask you to do what's good and right and fair and decent. It has a high frequency to it. And as you purify your heart, I guess you can say in some ways you're clearing lower frequencies out from your heart, and it just becomes more and more and more apparent to you when it is divinity or your high self prompting you. So I think that's the big thing with purifying the heart. It just becomes when you first start, all your mind and your fears and your attachments and all that's mixed in with the messages that you're getting from your heart, and it's maybe a little harder to differentiate. But it's really interesting, because I heard some Christian broadcasting, and the guy had said something, and I thought, that's exactly it. He goes, yeah, he says, it's been not in my heart. It's been on my heart to do this thing. It's been on my heart. And I thought, yeah, that's it. That's it. When it's God, it's on your heart. Now, at first, you may let it percolate for months or years before you do something about it. But as you get better and better at it, you can respond within seconds. And as you get better and better at responding rapidly, you become a more and more useful tool for divinity in the world. Because there may be times you got a 10-second window to respond. And if you haven't learned to trust that voice and respond to it quickly, that opportunity is gone. That opportunity is gone. I heard this one guy, he's an old guy, and he goes, I never wear a seatbelt. He goes, but I was driving along one day and I felt so strongly, put on your seatbelt. He goes, that I did. A few seconds later, car came from across the street and slammed into him broadside, that it would have killed him if he didn't have it on. Right? Wow. So it's learning to respond quicker and quicker, then you become more and more useful to God to use you. And you've heard some, maybe haven't, some really real Christians that have really connected with God, and God may tell them, drive over to this place and park in that parking lot, and it's like, all right, and they go, and just then some poor homeless person walks by, and then they're prompted, go and tell them that God loves them, right? And you go tell them, and they burst out crying because they were just getting ready to go kill themselves, right? So as you begin to purify your heart and sincerely open yourself up to being a hand of God in the world, it just is amazing. But the part that I haven't said is, not only is it amazing to be part of this much, much bigger picture, giving you a sense of really your life takes on a much greater value, but to feel the joy of letting God move through you, it's just, it's like when you do stop and help somebody and you feel that joy all day. Yeah, the more you get good at being that hand of God in the world, the more it's just incredible. And it just opens up a whole dimension, right? When that dimension closes up, life is so boring. Just, God, you're just dragging through life like there's got to be more.
Yeah.
And when that dimension opens up, it just starts becoming like magic. Life just starts becoming just every day is magic in some way.
So there can never be really any selfless service, because it's always for the self, right? I'm getting intrinsic value from loving service.
Well, so if you're doing it because you want, if you're doing it because you want this experience, and this is the trap I see a lot of new age people, they're chasing experiences. They'll do some breathing technique or meditation because they want this amazing cosmic consciousness. That's pure ego. That's a huge stumbling block from it happening. But if your intention is correct, which is, God, I see the suffering in the world and you have brought so much joy and love into my heart. Can I be of some service to help bring it to others? And when you do it with a pure heart, right, then that opens you once again to your high self. I think I'd mentioned it before, that one of the most powerful ways to attune to your high self or divinity is hold the intention for the good of the other. And if it's mixed in with that you want something for yourself, it blunts it to a certain extent, and then that's between you and God, how much that's going to blunt it. But the more you learn to just operate from that pure heart out of love, the more powerful it becomes. It just becomes more, and then you don't, it's not so much then you're doing it to feel good as you're doing it because when you operate in harmony with love, you feel good, right? And you just, it's like coming home. It's like coming home. It's like, yeah, this peace, this joy, what I'm feeling is what I've been looking for my whole life. So yes, you benefit from it, but your main intent is you're grateful to God for the peace and joy and blessings you have, and you sincerely wish to share it at some level.
Yeah, the frequency, paying attention to your frequency, which our feelings is an indicator of our frequency, right? How we can tell is my frequency rising, is my frequency falling? Well, you feel it. That's the indicator.
You feel it. Yeah. My teacher would say, he goes, these are sacred feelings. That feeling of joy, that feeling of peace, that feeling of love, that feeling of courage in the face of difficulties. Those are he calls it sacred feelings, which are high frequency energy. As it moves through this human mechanism, we experience it as feelings, right? So exactly right. When you go to do something, just check the frequency. Like, go ahead.
We could have someone that has no idea what you're talking about. Like you're saying, like oneness. What are you talking about? I'm just trying to do the best I can. Right. And that person can still check their feelings and feel the feeling of whatever goodness, or like for me, it's very simple, of an expanding, flowing feeling versus a contracting, protective feeling, and I can tell my resonance changing accordingly, up or down.
Yeah, and it's even simpler than that. You can ask a little kid, if you're trying to teach them about listening to God. I said, well, did you ever do something mean to your friend? Yeah. How did you feel? Bad. Did you ever do something kind for your friend? Yeah. How'd that feel? Felt good. All right, it's that simple, right?
Yeah.
So when you do stop and help for no other reason that it's needed, right? And see how you feel. Everybody, well, almost everybody's done something like that in their life where they did something good for its own sake. And everybody has done something probably where it's just out of meanness. How do you feel? Right? One, you feel really good. The other feel really bad, right? So, I mean, it's just that simple. Then as you begin to turn your awareness inward and start paying attention, well, then it's subtle. Then you don't need these huge, big shifts to notice it. You can just shift your intention slightly. Let's just say you're dealing with a problem and you think of the solution and just feel how that feels.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel right, it's not the highest solution. But many times, and you go, well, how about this and that? Until finally you come on a solution where that feels the best of all the things you've done. It's like, okay, that's a good place to start.
I want to share something with you, an image. because there is another part of going from feeling bad to feeling bad, but it's still progression. And I think a lot of us get in these places, and this is from David Hawkins. He's a guy that experienced oneness with God and a lot of really fun stuff. And his level of consciousness is, I don't know if you've ever seen this.
No.
But he basically explains all of these experiences as just a frequency, and shame being at the bottom and guilt being a higher frequency, and above that apathy, above that grief, and the frequency keeps on rising and rising and rising, pride, until it gets to what he calls courage, which is basically the part that lets go of my own separate entity being the main. I'm trying to gain my entity. I'm trying to gain over here, and it requires taking from over there. Like that's the line to step across, and then it goes into higher levels. In this model, someone could be, he says, someone could be in shame and really not eat, like completely checked out of life. And he realized that he was a psychotherapist. He realized when people start to cry, which is more like grief, they would start to eat. And he's like, oh wow, there's progression here. And I bring this up just to say there's a lot of us that maybe in a place where we can't really say, well, this is good and that's bad. That simpleness, I don't really know even how to define good, because all I can feel is bad. But yet there's still some progress when it comes to raising our frequency, maybe good compared to where I was at. I don't know if I'm going in the right direction. I don't know if I'm doing good. Does God love me? Am I doing the right thing? How do I progress when I'm stuck in the dregs, like that? What comes up for you?
Well, the biggest thing that I would say is, I remember Edgar Cayce said that the foundation of sin is self, right? But I'd say self, not even selfishness, but just turn your awareness primarily to your own self. So, and this is what I find for many people that are stuck in being unhappy. Their concern is primarily themselves, always, right? And I even heard it put that actually shyness is just, to a great extent, just self, just being fixated on self. Well, how am I appearing to this person? Or how do I look? Self. Whereas if you turn your awareness outward and put your interest on the other person, it's like, well, this person looks interesting. Let me find out about them. Then that shyness starts to dissipate. So a lot of times it's turned all your concern is turned to yourself. The moment you start becoming concerned for another, it's like, yeah, my life sucks. I'm miserable. I'm broke, but this poor bastard here is worse than me. Let me, I got half a pizza crust.
Yeah.
That's 10 days old, right? And I'm crying. That's all I got to eat. But this guy doesn't even have that. Let me give him half of my pizza crust. And immediately starts to raise your frequency and you start moving. Now, whether that chart is actually accurate, to me, doesn't matter. The principle is correct, that as you raise your frequency of consciousness, you start moving out of the negative feelings and start moving into the positive feelings. But the real secret, I think, for that is other. Turn your concern to others. I mean, okay, yeah, maybe you have it bad, but if you just sit there and dwell on how bad your life is, you're never going to feel any better. But on the other hand, if you look around and see somebody who doesn't even have that dried pizza crust and give them half of yours, you'll immediately start raising your frequency and start to feel better. So it's like the right-hand path, left-hand path, as it's described in Law of One: service to self or service to others. And that's, to me, just a real simple way of saying, where are you directing your effort, right? Mm-hmm. So service to self is turning it within for self, as self. Service to others is turning it outside of yourself And that's the right-hand path. And to me, that another way of describing that is expansion of consciousness, beginning to experience God outside of yourself as other, right? Whereas left-hand path is contraction of your consciousness, searching for God as self and power, right? So that's, to me, just a kind of a simple way of understanding it. And the problem when I see people that are unhappy and trying to cure their unhappiness, a lot of times it's still self, which, when I hear people say, well, I got to learn to take care of myself. I got to learn to, it's like, okay, well, you do have to take care of yourself, right? But you're not going to find the happiness you're looking for. I call him Guru John Wooden, right? The most winning college basketball coach in the history of basketball coaches. And he had a saying, I call him Guru John Wooden because some of the things he said, but one of the things that I loved, he says, happiness begins where selfishness ends. It's just that simple. It's just really that simple. Happiness begins where selfishness ends. So you can say, well, the ultimate selfishness is unselfishness. Well, yeah, but it basically what you're doing is you're tuning to your divinity within yourself, and that's what brings you joy. So you realize, more unselfish I am, the happier I am. Well, it's a divine unselfishness that gives you your joy. But you have to really, the intention is you truly want to be of some service to others that don't have it as good as you.
So do you think that it equates then, since it's all about frequency, and I can raise my frequency by being more concerned about others than about preserving or taking care of my separate self? Does it equate that frequency rises when the intention to love, when there's an intention to love? Is that a direct equation?
Well, so this is my experience, is the most powerful immediate way to connect to higher levels of my own consciousness is turn my intention to the good of others. The moment I do that, instantly it raises my frequency, and it's almost like it opens up a channel to higher levels of my consciousness. Yeah, it's that intention of the good or service to others.
Now, my concepts get me going in all different directions. My mind comes up with the wildest things. And like Krishna had said, the fruit of our labor is not ours, or something like that. I'm butchering the quote. Is intention and results completely unrelated as far as like frequency wise?
So you have to. What Krishna talked about is one of the most powerful methods of liberation, which is a whole episode on itself, right? But one of the most powerful methods is dedicate all actions to God and don't take any of the fruit of the action. Okay, so without going into a huge, long discourse into that, you can't do that mentally. You have to do that at a heart, emotional level. And the way you do it is listen to the promptings of divinity from within you and doing it, and then be completely unconcerned with whether people say thank you or F you, whether it works or it doesn't work. That's the fruit. That's taking the fruit of the action, is being concerned with blame or praise or even outcome. It's learning to listen to the promptings of divinity within you and doing it for the joy of attuning to that frequency. It's when you now connect it to how people respond or whether it works or not. Now that's what screws it up. And that's the human trap, because it's
the attachment of it, right?
That's the human trap. That's very, very human, to attach your action to the results, right? Or the reaction of people. And if you do that, you basically, for lack of a better term, you hitch your karma to their karma, and you'll get liberated when everyone else does. When everybody's liberated, you'll get liberated. But the way to be liberated at your own pace is to learn to manifest this high frequency consciousness for the joy of manifesting high frequency consciousness. It's very much like the sun shines because it's its nature to shine. It doesn't stop and ask you, well, listen, I've been shining on you now for a long time. What are you giving me in return? It doesn't do that. It shines because it's its nature to shine. Our true nature is to radiate love to all beings everywhere. Then the human trap is then to expect a return, to be taking the fruit of that. So that's the trap. So if you can learn to attune to high frequency consciousness by holding the intent for the good of the other, whether it's one other or the whole world or the universe, right? And then be completely unconcerned with what comes back. Find that the joy that you feel to hold that frequency and manifest it into the physical reality is enough.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, man. And we're right on time. Well, almost on time.
Right on time. I can't stop you talking, man. Get going on God.
I know.
All right, David, you're a beautiful man. Let's do it again.
All right, brother. And listen, once again, our intention here is to just get this information out there because we're at a very critical point in the history of this planet that it's turning on frequency of consciousness. So you have those that need to turn it to the left-hand path are doing their very, very best, and they're pretty good. Those that want to turn it to the right-hand path and doing their best. So we're trying to just put our little bit in on the scale, try to tip it in the direction. Yeah, it's in the direction of high consciousness, because if we can tip the planet in high consciousness, we're heading into a golden age. If it goes the other way, it's not going to be a lot of fun. So we're just trying to do our little bit, and bread on the water, man. Just toss it out there and let God bring it to whoever is needing it.
Yes, sir. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.